What's up, Jackalopes? So we're filming in my corner today because I didn't feel like moving my ring light in here, and this tripod is not tall enough. It's what it is. Anyway, November was a crazy, kind of rough month emotionally and mentally, and so I didn't do any kind of October wrap up. So today, I'm going to tell you about everything I read in October and November, which I believe total is, I read 10 books between October and November. Most of those were in October. As I said, I didn't do much in November. However, both of these months were excellent reading months in terms of the quality of the books that I was reading. So in October, I read 7 books. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, 7 books. And 2 of them were 4 stars and the other 5 were 5 stars. And then I read 3 books in November and all of them were 5 stars. So I did have excellent reading months in terms of quality, if I can speak. I think let's just go through these in order because I was doing a couple of readathons in October and that affected kind of the order that I read things in. So to start, I read The House in the Cerulean Sea by T.J. Klune, which is been described as a middle grade for adults, but it's basically a fantasy book that follows Linus Baker, who is kind of a caseworker in this almost our world, but slightly more fantasy world, where he works for the department in charge of magical youth, and he's sent on this top secret assignment to a orphanage on this little island to ensure that the orphanage is running properly and that they don't need to be concerned that the children there might bring about the end of days. And it's just about Linus kind of finding his family with these people on the island. It is so wholesome and sweet. I think a lot of people have said this. I haven't seen any bad reviews for this book. It's just such a sweet, uplifting book. Like, if you're looking for something to make you smile, I would highly recommend this one because I loved it and I don't think I've seen anybody else have anything bad to say about it. It's just an excellent book. I'm gonna look at my list because I had some stuff that wasn't physical and I keep forgetting what. The next thing I read was at the beginning of Fortnite Frights, which was a readathon that was being hosted by Seiji from The Artisan Geek. And the first thing that I read for that was Destroyer, which I read for the prompt to read a book written by a Black or African author. And so this one is a graphic novel that is about Frankenstein's monster. And essentially Frankenstein's monster is revealed to exist again, and then all these scientists are trying to figure out how to handle that situation because the monster has become hell-bent on destroying humanity because he believes that there's nothing left to be saved of humanity. And they go to this well-known scientist named Dr. Baker to get her help, except that she actually sides with the monster because she believes also that there's nothing left of humanity to save after her son has been killed by the police. And so it's about that situation and just really explores some interesting ideas around race and about police violence and motherhood and just a lot of very interesting themes and ideas. I absolutely loved this. I don't think I mentioned it. I gave House in the Cerulean Sea 5 stars, and I also gave this 5 stars because this is just such a poignant story, and I think that to be honest, I think this should be like required reading because it is such an easily digestible way of examining these ideas. But I absolutely love this. This is the second thing I've read from Victor Laval. Yeah, he's quickly becoming a favorite author. His writing is excellent. And I enjoyed comparing this with his writing in one of his novellas that I read, which is The Ballad of Black Tom. Yeah, like I said, he's quickly becoming a favorite of mine. The next thing I read was also for Fortnite Frights. This was to read a short story, and I read Crispin's Model by Max Gladstone, which is a kind of Lovecraftian cosmic horror thing where this woman starts modeling for an artist named Crispin, and Crispin is slowly bringing the unknown into our world. It's really interesting too because it also explores some themes that are like loss and grief and things like that. So I think that if you like Lovecraftian or cosmic horror, that you'll probably like that story. I really enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars, but I don't have a whole lot to say about that because I can't go into too much depth without ruining it for you. And I think that it is a story that you should go into knowing as little as possible. Next up was The Only Good Indians which I also, again, read Fortnite Frights. This was for the Read a Book by an Indigenous Author prompt, and this was also one of the group discussion books for that readathon. And this one follows several men who, 10 years after this hunting incident gone wrong, are being haunted by some sort of vengeful entity. And it's coming up on the exact anniversary of this event. And this story is just so beautifully written. Like, it's a horror novel. And I was fully expecting to be really scared and to be really grossed out because I'd heard that it was quite gory. And I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to handle it because I do have to be careful with what I read. Some things cause me to have anxiety spirals that I can't really control. And usually I can kind of tell when I start reading something if it's going to be a problem. And I started reading this and I was really surprised to find that it wasn't a problem for me. So I really enjoyed this. I did have to take a break after part 1 because the ending of part 1 is very intense. But if you're at all interested in this, if you've seen anything about this, I would highly recommend reading it. This is just such a well-written story, and I loved the characters in it. I thought it was really interesting that as I was reading, I found that I could empathize with both sides. I empathized with the men who were being hunted and with the entity that was trying to get its revenge on them. My favorite character, I think, was Dinner Crossguns, who we get relatively little time with until closer towards the end of the story, but even in a very brief amount of time, I felt like I really got to know her as a character. And this was really true for all of them. You get a really good sense of who each one of them is as a person, and they were just such believable characters to me. Like, you could have told me if I had not read this that they were real people, and I would have believed you, because they're just so vividly written, and I can't really say enough good things about this book. It also explores ideas about guilt, and there was a really interesting thing with intergenerational memory that I thought was cool, and I just would really recommend reading this one if you think you can stomach it. It is kind of gory, particularly the end of part 1, and then through most of part 2. There is quite a bit of gore, and if you're squeamish, I would say maybe just be wary, but I think if you have any interest, though, you should definitely pick this up and see what you think. The next thing I read in October was a memory called Empire by Arcady Martine. I believe I read this for Fortnite Frights. I don't remember what prompt it was for anymore. I think maybe a book by a queer author, I want to say. But I also read this for the 3 Blondes in a Book Club's spooky 24-hour readathon. This was the one book that I finished during that time because it is quite chunky. But this was so good. I don't read a lot of sci-fi because a lot of sci-fi premises just don't really appeal to me, but I think I'm starting to find more that I'm interested in. But this one follows an ambassador who goes to this capital of a space empire. She's from a small mining station. Her name is Mahit. And she arrives only to find out that the previous ambassador was murdered and nobody will tell her anything about it. So she ends up on this kind of crazy journey of trying to figure out who killed the previous ambassador, figure out why he died, and also attempt to not get murdered herself. Because not knowing why he was killed, she doesn't know that she may or may not be in kind of the line of fire there too. So it's all about that. But in addition, it's all about her trying to prevent her mining station from being annexed into the Empire as well, because they were trying to maintain a level of independence from the Empire, but they're walking a very difficult line because they're trying not to get annexed, but they need the Empire for protection as well. So they're trying very hard to maintain that independence, and also because this mining station has a kind of technology called imago lines that allows them to connect with the memories of ancestors, but it's kind of a type of technology that's very reviled in the Empire, so they're trying to keep that a secret as well. So there's a lot of very touchy subjects that Mahit has to deal with while she's basically having the worst first week of her job ever. I thought this was a lot of fun. I really loved the characters in this one too. I really enjoyed Mahit. I enjoyed the bits that we got about the previous ambassador Iskander, and all of the other characters were really interesting. It did take a while to get used to the naming conventions because the Emperor of the Empire is Emperor Six Direction, and then Mahit's kind of liaison that's working with her is 3 Seagrass. So it takes a little while to get used to the naming conventions, but once you get used to it, it's not that difficult to read, and I absolutely loved this. I really enjoyed the process of reading this one. I also started Mexican Gothic during that readathon, although I didn't finish it during that, but this was the last thing that I read for Fortnite Frights. I don't remember what prompt this was for, I'm sorry. If I find it, I'll put it on the screen or something. My cat is outside the door fussing at me. Anyway, this follows Nomi, who goes to a manor called High Place after receiving a disturbing letter from her cousin who was recently married one of the family members there, a man named Virgil, and her cousin Catalina basically says, he's trying to poison me, I need you to save me. So Nomi goes to High Place to see what's going on and ends up discovering some pretty dark family secrets among the people living at High Place. And it's very, very well written. This was another one where I loved the characters. I think this one is also very atmospheric because High Place is extremely creepy, and is another thing I think everybody says, but it's going to make you think about mushrooms differently. And I don't want to say more than that because I think this is, again, another book you should really go into knowing as little as possible because it is very atmospheric and because it has a lot of really interesting twists. So I loved this one. This was, I think, my last 5-star of October. So yeah, that was very exciting as well. The last book that I read in October was The Secrets of Witchtide by Kate Saunders, which I had as an audiobook. And this one follows Letitia Rod, who's kind of like a middle-aged widow, and her brother is a criminal barrister, and he frequently hires her to help him solve cases because she's really good at dealing with people. So in this instance, Letitia is sent off to pretend to be the governess at this wealthy family's home so that she can investigate the young woman that the family's eldest son is interested in marrying, because the parents believe that something is off about this woman. Her name is Helen, and they think that something is very off about Helen, and they want Letitia Rod to see if she can dig up Helen's secrets and ensure that she will be an okay match for their son. That, however, leads to many, many, many more secrets being uncovered. And the thing that I loved about this was, one, that it really kept me guessing. I never really knew what direction the story was going to take, but I felt like it was putting all the clues in front of me. I could have figured it out if I really worked at it, but it really did have a lot of interesting twists, and it kept me guessing in a way that was a lot of fun. And then the other thing I love about it is that the protagonist's strength is her ability to connect with people, to network. So she's able to solve mysteries because she's very good at getting people to trust her and getting people to talk to her. She's also good at leveraging her other social connections to get information. And I thought that that was really well done and well written. And I think that's a very fun way to approach a cozy mystery, because it was less about like physical clues that were there and more about her ability to get people to talk to her and to confide in her. And then the other bit of it that I thought was really great is that it very much focuses on connections between women, and ultimately women are completely vital to the solving of the case, all the various women in the story. And I thought that that was really, again, interesting, less common in some of the historical mysteries that I've read and cozy mysteries that I've read, so I really loved that aspect of it too. And that one was a 4-star. But that is everything that I managed to read in October, and then in November I read a lot less, but again, everything in November was a 5-star. So the first thing I read in November was Of Dragons, Feasts, and Murders by Elliot de Boddard. This book follows Tuon and his husband Asmodeus as they return to the Dragon Kingdom under the Seine River to visit Tuon's family around, I think it's around the New Year. Tuon is a dragon prince from a Vietnamese-inspired society that lives in the river, and then Asmodeus is a fallen angel who is from the above ground part of Paris. So they go to visit and quickly find themselves embroiled in a murder mystery that has really high-reaching implications for the royal family. I can't say a whole lot more because this is extremely short and it's a very fast-paced mystery, but what I really liked about it was that there was a lot of political stuff in here too. This one I really enjoyed reading as a standalone because it is a standalone. However, it does follow chronologically after one of her series, which is the Dominion of the Fallen series, the first book of which is The House of Shattered Wings, which I have over there. I just forgot to grab it. But I think that I would recommend maybe reading that series first, although this works as a standalone, and obviously I read it that way because I haven't read the series yet. But there was a sense to me that there was some stuff that would have been more meaningful to me had I read the series in advance. But again, I loved it. I gave it 5 stars. You know, if you really just want to dive into it anyway, like, you can absolutely do that, and it's so good. So the next thing I read in November was Trail of Lightning by Rebecca Roanhorse, which is a post-apocalyptic story that follows Maggie Hosky, who is a monster slayer in Dene, which is Navajo territory, which is very much what's left of the country after a climate apocalypse has drowned the rest of it. There's like a strip down the middle of the country, and that's all that's left. And so she's this monster slayer, and she ends up having to hunt down a witch. And it's really interesting. She also gains a new companion whose name is Kai, and I loved both of them. They're excellent. I think they make a really interesting team, especially because they don't always get along, but like when it matters, they can work together. So I thought that that was very interesting. I just loved the characters. I thought the story was really interesting. It was very different from anything else I've read, and I thought that it was particularly interesting that it was very inspired by and pulled from Navajo tradition and culture. So that was really interesting, and I really enjoyed reading that. So that also got 5 stars. So the last thing I read in November was The Importance of Being Earnest by Oscar Wilde, which is a play following 2 men, Algernon and Jack, as they get themselves into a very weird situation where separate people think that they're both the same person, and so kind of antics ensue as they are individually trying to woo 2 different women, and it's just very funny. It's social commentary on what life was like during the time that Oscar Wilde lived, and it's just very funny, and I can't tell you a lot because it's so short, and I would definitely be spoiling it if I did tell you too much more. But if you like satire and if you like wit and just very like fast-paced dialogue, I think that you would enjoy this because it's just very funny and it's very fast-paced, and I really enjoyed it, and it's very over the top. So yeah, it's just an enjoyable play. But that's everything that I managed to read across those 2 months. If you read any of these books, let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear your thoughts on them. And if you want to, you can also connect with me on social media. I'm on Twitter and Goodreads, and those links will also be in the description. So thank you so much for watching. I know that this was a long time coming. It took me a while to kind of get my shit together and film a wrap up. But I hope that you enjoyed this video, and I hope to see you in the next one too. Bye.